Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for being here to our Disability Tapas on finding that first job. My name's Laura Hunkler. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a middle-aged white woman with medium length brown hair.
And I'm Lauren Platt. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a recruiting and research associate with Career Services. And I'm a woman in her 40s, a white woman in her 40s with long blonde hair, currently wearing glasses.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thank you for coming to our Tapas. My name is Savio Chan. I use he, him pronouns. I'm an Asian male in my 30s. I'm wearing a yellow cap and a black hoodie because it's cold right now. I'm the lead access specialist and deaf services coordinator at the Disability Resource Center. Yeah, so I just wanted to give an overview of this presentation. It's a Tapas in honor of the National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And we'll be going over some information about some on and off campus resources about navigating the workplace as a person with a disability. I just want to remind everyone that we do have automatic captions available. They're at the bottom. Just click on that CC button if you need it. We do ask that you keep your video and audio hidden or muted. And if you do want to share something or speak up, please use the raise hand feature or just throw out some comments or questions in the chat box. Okay, so we want to begin with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which Cal Poly sits carries the heritage and culture of the indigenous people of San Luis Obispo County, the Yaktichu Tichu Yaktahini Northern Chumash tribe. We honor the indigenous people's connections to these territories and respect the land on which we gather. You know, this is, we are approaching Thanksgiving, so this might be a good time to, you know, honestly reflect and take a look at the stories behind how the US has settled on this land. So if you want to learn more, just visit that link at the bottom, surj.org/resources/indigenous-solidarity. And there's a Rethinking Thanksgiving toolkit to review if you want to learn more about that. Okay, so this is the nitty gritty. So knowing your rights and responsibilities and how you're protected as a job seeker or employee with a disability is really important to evaluate whether you've been, you know, given an equal chance to succeed at work. So the first bullet, federal and state laws prohibit disability discrimination and ensure equal access in the workplace. Does anyone know what those laws might be? Maybe you can type it in the chat. Yep, the ADA is definitely one of them. Anyone else? It's ungraded, so. Okay, so yeah, the ADA and Section 508, 504, yes. So the Americans with Disability Act is in play, the Rehabilitation Act, and the Fair Employment and Housing Act. They all prohibit discrimination against people with disabilities in the workplace, among other settings. The key difference between the ADA and FEHA, the Fair Employment Housing Act, is that the ADA mandates that employers with 15 or more employees, they cannot discriminate against qualified individuals with disabilities. The FEHA bars discrimination by employers with 5 or more employees. So FEHA is a California state law, so it's a little bit more protective of individuals with disabilities. And basically, if you have a disability and you can do the basic duties of the job, you cannot be harassed, demoted, terminated, paid less, or treated more poorly because of your disability. Bullet 2, be considered for a position based on their skills and merit. So a qualified individual, as defined by the ADA, means that an individual with a disability who meets all the skills, experience, education, or other job-related requirements of an employment position that they seek and who can perform the essential functions of the job with or without reasonable accommodations. So in other words, if an applicant with a disability meets all of the requirements for the job, they should be considered just as any other qualified candidate in the hiring process, regardless of whether they'll need accommodations or not. And then the third and fourth bullets kind of lead into our next slides, but disability disclosure. You'll want to consider sharing your disability information if you need accommodations for the interview or hiring process and for the workplace. The law does state that you do need to share that information with a representative at the employer. What else? And then the last bullet, employers cannot lower the salary of an employee with a disability or exclude an applicant from the hiring process if they're citing the cost of accommodation. So the employer must pay for all of the costs associated with accommodations. But if there is an undue hardship on the employer, they still must engage in an interactive process to ensure that there is an alternative but equally effective accommodation, or give the employee a choice of providing the accommodation or paying for a portion of the accommodation. So I'll talk about some other resources later on in the slide that can help with paying for or providing accommodations. Okay, so disclosure. Why would you need to disclose your accommodation or your disability? So I did mention that in the earlier slide that it is required by law that you share your disability information in order to receive any accommodations to participate in any aspect of the job search or employment. And that also includes interviews. So you might want to reflect on whether you've utilized accommodations to access Cal Poly courses and activities, or to access community services like the hospital or other organizations. And again, you'll need to disclose it to someone who represents the employer. So that could be a direct supervisor or human resources in order to receive the protections under ADA and FEHA. And there is no right time or place to disclose, but you'll want to take a look at, whether there is preparation needed in order to provide the accommodation. So if there is, you want to be as proactive as possible, but it can happen at any time in the hiring process or during employment. So that could be on a resume or cover letter. It could be before the interview, on the application when you're applying for the job, at the interview, or after you've accepted an offer, or during the course of employment, or not at all.
This is Laura speaking. And kind of in relation to that last bullet of maybe, never disclosing, or when you might want to disclose, or what you might want to disclose. So as Savio mentioned, a disability is really only important in a work or employment context if it affects a person's ability to perform the essential functions of a job. So as a first step, you want to be determining, will it affect your ability to perform the essential functions of a job? And if so, you want to determine what supports you'll need. So a good thing to think about would be what accommodations have worked well for you in the past and why. And then really being able to talk about those with an employer, what accommodations you'll need and how they've helped you in the past. And it's important to remember that, the main thing an employer wants to know is that an applicant can perform the essential duties of the job and that they have the skills and qualifications to do that. And that includes with accommodations and supports. I think, as you're going through the job search process and interviewing for positions, one way you're always preparing is thinking about your skills and qualifications and kind of thinking about anecdotes and examples that are going to back up the fact that you have those skills and qualifications. And so having a conversation around disclosure is pretty similar to that. And in preparing for this presentation today, I read a study that gave some examples of people really being able to talk about their disability as a strength and as something that actually makes them uniquely qualified for a position. So one example the study talked about was maybe a person with Asperger's syndrome having more patience for highly focused tasks, and that made them uniquely qualified and well positioned for a job in software development that requires highly focused tasks and patience. Another one was having ADHD could potentially contribute to a person's entrepreneurial abilities as a result of having enhanced creativity and risk aversion. So just some examples there of like kind of reframing disability to talk about it in terms of making someone uniquely qualified and to talk about it as a strength. I also wanted to just give a few examples of workplace accommodations. So that could be things like changing an employee's work arrangement. So doing things like adjusting lighting or raising up a desk on blocks. It could also be modifying equipment or devices like computer software. It could be providing qualified readers or interpreters, or things like modified work schedules and telecommuting options. And then I also had just some examples of, people that determined it was important to disclose their disability and why. So I was going to give you some of those examples now. Jasmine is fresh out of college and looking for a job. She has a vision impairment and uses different software, including a screen reader and a document reader. She has an interview coming up at a law firm that will require her to use the computer for a hands-on exercise, and it's unlikely that the computer will have her software loaded. So she decides to disclose her disability so she can request to use her own computer for that assignment during the interview. Another student with depression is interning for a local PR firm. When she has a depressive episode, she sometimes misses project deadlines. So she decides to disclose her disability so she can ask for a more flexible work schedule and a telecommuting option. And then the last one, a person with schizophrenia, which is currently controlled with medication, asks for a private workspace or dividers so she can limit distractions and make their time at work more productive. So those are just some examples of people who decided it was important and would be helpful if they disclosed their disability in that context. And so if you're planning to have this conversation, again, just like for an interview or anytime you're preparing to apply for jobs, practice is really key. And doing things like creating a script could be really helpful. We in career services could certainly be people you could work with to create that script and be someone that you could bounce those ideas off of and practice it with us. And if you did create a script, what you'd really kind of want to focus on is first talking about your positive attributes and strengths, identifying those limitations or challenges that you could face at work because of your disability. And then, like I mentioned before, making suggestions for accommodations and talking about how those accommodations have helped you in the past. And really, kind of thinking about this all through the lens of what the employer might want to know, and also like how disclosing your disability could be a benefit to the company or organization, the employer, and even your coworkers. I think using that lens would be a helpful tool to create the script. And then just ending it with, positive points like how you expect to succeed in the job with the necessary supports.
Yeah, and I want to jump in with a little anecdote of my own. So I work at the National Deaf Center, and we've encountered a lot of these stories about #DeafGain. And it's how deaf people can bring something that can apply to everyone. It can be a benefit for employers and coworkers. So there is this one program that provides STEM training opportunities for students. And there's a deaf student that signed up to be a part of a solar company. So they went out and installed like solar at different homes. And while on site, there's going to be a crew on the ground and a crew on the roof. And oftentimes they're multilingual. They could be speaking English, Spanish, and now American Sign Language. And most of the time they communicated by shouting at each other, from the roof to the ground and to the ground to the roof. And it wasn't a very effective way to communicate. But this deaf student who, obviously disclosed, came and started signing. And everyone else learned to sign, and it was a way more effective tool to, carry out your regular work duties. So it's a really great story of how disability can be a strength. And I think overall, as a student with a disability here at Cal Poly, you've been through a lot, and there's obviously a lot of persistence with the hidden labor of disability and advocating for yourself to get accommodations. So those are also very translatable skills in the workplace.
Definitely. Thanks for sharing that, Savio. And then in terms of navigating the job search, and this not only applies to like career positions after you graduate, but this could also be for internships, on-campus jobs, part-time jobs, or any opportunity to get professional experience. This applies to all of that. So when we are helping students look for opportunities, these are kind of the 4 things we focus on. And really step 1 is always about clarity around what you're looking for. And a lot of times I see students who are stuck on this one. They're starting to look for opportunities, but they don't really know yet what they're looking for. And I think that can be a really easy way to get overwhelmed when you start looking, but you're not really sure what you're looking for yet. So if this is where you are, we help with this phase too. We have lots of tools. Career counselors are great to have discussions with, to talk about things like your interests, skills, values, ideas you have for careers you're interested in. We have lots of resources to help if this is kind of where you are. But step 1 is really clarity around the roles you're interested in, the industries you're looking into, where you want to live. So clarity around those pieces. And then you can start to look for opportunities and make connections. So I would say a great first step for looking for opportunities would be to get on Handshake, which is also called Mustang Jobs. It's one of the quick links in your portal. And that is Cal Poly's job posting site. It's where you can find work study positions, on-campus positions, local roles, both internships and jobs, but also nationwide internships and career positions. So that's a great place to start. But there are also lots of other places you can be looking to, lots of other websites and things like that. But also making connections is really important here too. So we talk a lot about varying your approach to a job search. You're absolutely going to be applying to things online, but I think what can really help you get traction is if you're also working to make connections. And what I mean by that is, doing things like informational interviews, which is talking to professionals who work in a field that you're interested in, to do a few things. One of them would be to really clarify and understand if it is something you would enjoy and that you want to pursue. And then it also has this other great benefit of, people who work in the industry giving you really specific tailored advice. And then they might even know of opportunities or other people you could talk to learn more about, things, internships or jobs or things like that. And then we also offer lots of events like career fairs or panels with professionals. So we also try to bring those connections to you as well. Then you're going to want to prepare your materials. So a great first step is getting your resume updated, cover letters, updating things like your LinkedIn. And that's a big thing that we help with here in Career Services, helping you get those things ready to go and tailored for the kinds of opportunities you're interested in. And then we always just like to mention managing expectations. So sometimes people come in and they're frustrated with their internship search. And one of my first questions is, how many things have you applied to? And sometimes it's like, five positions. And just for context, that's really not that many. You might be applying to lots and lots of jobs. Even like 50 isn't that much. So, it's kind of important just to kind of understand how it all works. It's good to get started early because it is a multi-step process. So, really starting to think about it several months before you're hoping to work is a good idea. And then seeking help. So that was the other thing I wanted to mention, just specifically how Career Services can help. So as I mentioned, we are great at helping with resumes and cover letters. We have drop-in hours virtually Monday through Thursday. That's a great time to bring in your documents and have someone here look them over. We can really help you with where to look. So Mustang Jobs, as I said, is one of many places you can be looking. And we have college specialist counselors that can help you figure out, based on the industry that you're interested in, specific places that would be good for you to be looking, or specific, clubs to join, or events happening on campus or through our office that you might want to check out. We can also help with interviewing support. So this is something a lot of students take advantage of. Interviewing can be nerve-wracking. We do mock interviews here. We can help, just kind of talk through what that looks like and what you can anticipate. So we provide lots of support with that. We have a lot of online resources related to interviewing too, where you can do like mock virtual interviews. And then we have a lot of events and workshops here as well, as I mentioned before.
Okay, and this is Savio speaking. In addition to career services, Department of Rehabilitation is also a wonderful resource to explore using. They can provide a lot of supports with training, so that could include tuition, books and supplies, transportation, and a lot of the fees associated with attending college or with any other vocational training program. They can provide assistive technology. So, equipment related to assistive technology that could be like hearing aids or Bluetooth microphone or a braille, like type and speak braille reader or something like that. So it's a really great way to get the sort of funding that you may need for accommodations that you can bring on your own to the interview or to the job. There's other auxiliary aids and services, and they also do provide some similar resources to career services, job development, placement, and retention. So any sort of counseling with, job search or with interview, but also services that can provide for you to keep the job. Another great resource that they do have is on-the-job training. So if you feel like you may not have all of the skills or experience required for a certain position, Department of Rehabilitation can help you get set up on an on-the-job training where they will seek out an employer in your desired field and then place you there for a training with the expectation that they'll hire you. So during that training, you'll be able to get a stipend as well. And it's a really great way of getting trained and gaining those skills and experience that you need to get the job that you want. They could also provide any sort of work-related equipment, tools, and transportation, and so much more. So Department of Rehabilitation is a really great resource, and it's available all throughout California. And there are also vocational rehabilitation offices in every state, as well as tribal vocational rehab. So it's definitely a resource that's often underutilized in colleges, but it's something to definitely be aware of.
Okay, this is Lauren speaking. So in addition to the great resources and support through career services and the Department of Rehab that Laura and Savio have mentioned, I also wanted to chime in with a few other resources that might be helpful. Most of you have already heard of the Disability Resource Center since you're here at a Disability Tapas, but I have to plug the exceptional work that Savio and my colleagues in the DRC are doing. While classroom accommodations may be somewhat different than what you might see in the workplace, in many cases, there's likely some overlap. So learning about what accommodations are offered here at Cal Poly could really help you think about what might be helpful to you in your job as well. So if you haven't done so already, be sure to explore services through the Disability Resource Center. I also wanted to mention the Central Coast Assistive Technology Center. I'll endeavor to put some of these links in the chat as well. The Central Coast Assistive Technology Center is located here in San Luis Obispo. They work in tandem with the Department of Rehab and Tri-Counties organization, and they provide evaluations, training, and education specializing in general assistive technology services, vision and hearing technologies, and ergonomics. And they also have an assistive device lending library, which is really cool. Also, the Job Accommodations Network, JAN for short, is a wealth of information about your rights under the ADA, and as well as a place where you can get free and confidential one-on-one practical guidance for negotiating reasonable accommodations discussions. Askajan.org is their website. and then abilityjobs.com. So Laura mentioned Mustang Jobs, also called Handshake, which is our Cal Poly job listing site. And Ability Jobs is an example of another type of job listing site that's free for job seekers. And it's specifically designed for individuals with disabilities who are looking for opportunities. They have opportunities listed throughout the nation. So that's another great place to check. I guess just to conclude, some next steps, consider where you are in the process and what next steps would be most helpful for you. Are you just beginning to think about the job search? Are you actively applying for opportunities? Or maybe you're thinking about negotiating accommodations with the current or future employer. What next steps you might want to take will depend largely on where you are in the process. So think of it less like a roadmap and more like a menu that you could choose from depending on your needs and preferences. Given your unique skills and functional limitations, think about what workplace accommodations might be best to support you. You might want to connect with the Department of Rehab to see which of their services might be helpful. At the end of these slides, we'll share the contact information for the Department of Rehab representative who works directly with Cal Poly students. You might want to consider scheduling a meeting with the career counselor where you can practice types of conversations you might have around disclosing your disability status and requesting accommodations, or do a practice interview like Laura mentioned. For me, practice is really reassuring because I feel like I can expect a little bit of what's going to happen when I have these conversations. You might want to talk to peers or mentors about what their experience has been like. Some companies also have employee affiliation groups or associations you could reach out to. Cal Poly itself has a Disability Faculty and Staff Association. Maybe you would want to connect with one of the members on the DFSA. Or consider attending an upcoming career fair or a company information session, either in person or virtually. We have some that take place here in our department in career services. And then there are also a lot of companies who are wanting to connect with Cal Poly students online to talk a little bit about their company culture and what opportunities they're looking to hire for. Those could be a great opportunity to talk to representatives about what type of workplace accommodations they offer. So speaking of questions, this time we'd like to open the floor up to you all to see what questions you may have. Please feel free to either use the raise hand feature or type your questions in the chat, whatever you're comfortable with. And we'll also get our contact information up on the screen for you all as well.
Oh, I see Camille has her hand raised.
Hi, my name is Camille O'Brien. I use she, her pronouns. I am a Black woman with, you can't tell with the background, but my hair is kind of long. It's my COVID pandemic hair that kept growing. I am an associate dean in the College of Science and Mathematics and a professor in kinesiology and public health. I want to thank you all for putting this presentation together. I think it's super useful and informative. And I know it's directed towards students, but I'm wondering from the presenters if there's any tips or suggestions about how we can, and use this information to help faculty in their advising and mentoring of students, other than saying watch the tapas, right? Like, what might be some of the key things you'd want to make sure we include in the conversation with students if as they search for jobs?
That's such a great question. Savio, were you going to go? I saw a lot of us unmute. I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I know disability is often an iffy topic to talk about with students, and especially because of a lot of the confidentiality laws that are in place about, not directly asking about a student's disability, but, It could be an opportunity to discuss that if they disclose that they may need accommodations, or if they disclose that they are struggling due to a disability, to just be sure to connect them with the right resources. So the Disability Resource Center is absolutely a great place to refer them to, and we can, schedule an informational appointment to go through what their concerns are, what they may need, or even just how to talk about their disability with other people and how to advocate for their needs. And again, yeah, you did mention our website. Our website does have a lot of different resources. We do have, hopefully this top is on there, but there are a lot of other resources that are available. And of course, maybe connecting them with Department of Rehabilitation if the conversation goes that direction. But your best bet would be to just refer them to the DRC, and we can help do our part.
Mhm.
And
I think I would say the same thing, just more generally with job search too. I mean, just have them come and engage with us however they'd like. There are lots of ways to do it. If they want to come to a workshop on navigating the job search, we have those. If they want to meet one-on-one with a counselor or come to a quick drop-in session, there are lots of options and ways for them to engage. And I guess just sort of knowing that we have a lot of these nuanced conversations. I'll be honest, personally, I don't feel like disability comes up a lot in my conversations with students. I think just because they're probably not disclosing a lot of times, but I think we really want students to know that it's not that we're total experts in this area, but we are very comfortable having these nuanced conversations with students and not giving them black and white answers, but providing a space where we can kind of talk through how they want to approach something and the pros and cons, and just helping a student feel empowered and equipped to have those types of conversations.
I do want to piggyback off of that as well. So it's really important for us as an institution to not say no, to make sure that we are a welcoming environment. And that's a lot of the fear associated with people with disabilities, is that if they disclose it, it'll change what their expectations are for, if they're looking for an internship or, employment. So it's something that we can definitely collaborate on. It's like, if I don't know what the solution is, maybe I'll reach out or connect you with other people to answer that question or to accommodate your needs.
Yeah.
And so I see Pam there, raise hand.
I think Camille had a follow-up question.
Oh, Camille?
Yep, sorry, Pam, and thank you both, Savio and Laura. That was helpful. I just, in the context of students working with their faculty, a lot of them, have already disclosed, the faculty know that the student has disabilities because they're getting accommodations through the DRC. And so, and I think faculty sometimes will have a tendency to want to use their knowledge and experience, especially if it's maybe a blending of applying for jobs or applying to graduate school, right? So referring to the DRC, referring to career services, of course. But many faculty do know that the students have disabilities because it's been disclosed over time. And as they've made their way through their academic program and they're getting to that point of thinking about next steps, that was kind of the where that question came from for me. So appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Pam Doherty. I work in the Center for Teaching, Learning, Technology. Pronouns are she, her, hers, a white woman in her early 60s, blonde hair with a Cal Poly background. But I kind of had a different kind of question too, sort of on the other side, like the employer side, because I was thinking, these are all great resources for students, but we also know the discrimination that people with disabilities face when they're applying for jobs. And I was looking at these links that you were sharing, Lauren, like the ability jobs. And I was just curious, is the CSU system in there as an employer? If not, is there a way to get them in there? I know in the past that we've had trainings. I know when I worked at Humboldt, and then also I think they have them here where for hiring committees, they have to look at their, biases in terms of diversity and inclusion. I was wondering, just about, do you have any knowledge of or resources about how the CSU or Cal Poly in particular is looking at their practices in terms of hiring people with disabilities?
It's such a great question. I'm not sure if the CSU has listed opportunities on ability jobs, but I hope so. I wish we had someone here from the Human Resources Department to speak a little bit more about our university practices for faculty and staff. I'm not well versed in that, but I bet we could find a connection there who is.
I wanted to add that this is a conversation that's coming up a lot, I think, in a lot of career centers, and that is, you know, our role is to educate students, but it feels like increasingly we have a role in educating employers too, especially on topics around diversity, equity, and inclusion, because so many employers, that's like a focus of their recruiting now, but it doesn't mean they do it well, or that they are even a company that, you know, maybe they want to recruit a diverse, you know, workforce, but they don't really have programs in place to support that. So one thing we did, and I'm going to put it in the chat now, a couple of summers ago, we created this toolkit, a diversity, equity, and inclusion employer toolkit with just kind of, you know, some best practices that we put together. And then over the summer, we offered it as a virtual training for employers, and we're going to be doing it again in December. So we offer it externally, but certainly, you know, departments on campus could be invited to that too. So that's something that's happening.
And that kind of reminded me of another thing. So state and federal employers do require a certain percentage of their workforce to be workers with disabilities. So there's a little bit of incentive for people with disabilities to disclose their disability. And there are two different programs. So there's Schedule A for federal employers, and then there's the LEAP program for California state employers. And so I know the Department of Rehabilitation does provide that certification. And you know, you don't need to register for their services. People can just come up with their disability documentation, and they'll fill out that certification for you if you're looking for a job that has those, not limitations, but has those programs available.
Alexis, did you want to go ahead with your question?
Yeah, I'm trying to get an internship right now, and I have been put in contact with people from the DOR, which I'm very grateful for. But right now I'm in the process of trying to create a resume. And I was just wondering if there was like a workshop or anything like that to kind of help build like a resume and a cover letter, because I think that just working with somebody about that would be really helpful.
Absolutely. I'll have to send you our calendar. I don't think we have any coming up, but I would recommend making an appointment with a counselor, and you can do that by logging on to Mustang Jobs, which is also Handshake. Or you can come to our drop-in hours, which are Monday through Thursday, 1 to 4. So I'm going to provide some links in the chat for how you can do that. I'll also link to our resume and cover letter guide, because often that's a good place to start.
And I want to make sure we don't lose this question that was entered into the chat as well. If I experience discrimination at my workplace after disclosing my disability, what do I do? Do I just remind them of the law, or should I do something else? First of all, I really hope that this isn't something that you're currently experiencing. I don't feel anyone should be put in that position. I definitely would encourage you to talk to advisors. There are people here, like Laura mentioned, at Career Services, who could really be supportive for you in approaching those really challenging conversations with your employer. Savio, you may know of other resources too that could help support someone who's currently experiencing discrimination.
Yeah, so you definitely want to take this up with the employer directly if you feel comfortable sharing that information. If not, Department of Rehabilitation also has advocates, or just a conversation with you to explore how to advocate for yourself and for your accommodations. If it still, is not working out, you always have the option to file a complaint through the EEOC. So that's the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And if you file a complaint there, they will investigate and they will meet with the employer and see, what sort of, if there's discrimination going on, how to resolve it. So there are multiple avenues that you can take. It's just depending on what your comfort level is and, what approach you want to take with the employer. And I will post the EEOC link here. And I see Alexis's hand is raised again.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. Any other questions? So it looks like, we don't have any questions for today, but, feel free to reach out to us, either counseling services or the DRC if you do have other questions. But yeah, thank you for attending our presentation. We hope it was helpful.
Yeah, thank you all.
Yeah,
Thanks for
take
being
care.
here.